Let's modify this code and let's use a variable here. So first I'm going to remove my second debug statement, and now I'm going to create a variable here. I'm going to name my variable as greeting, and then I'm going to assign it a string value. Now in place of this hello world string here, I'm going to use my variable, and let's run our code. Our output should remain same. We should still see the hello world debug statement. Let's go back to our code and let's try to break it down. So what I've done here is I've created a variable and I stored a string value in that variable, and then I printed that variable value. Whenever you create a variable, first you need to define which type of data that particular variable is going to store. In our example, we have defined that this greeting variable is going to store a string data, and that's why we were able to store hello world in the greeting variable. Now this part here, it's called data type. So a string here is a data type. Apex support multiple type of data types, which we are going to discuss now. But before that, let's try to change this string to maybe something else. I'm going to use one more data type from Apex, and it's called integer, which can store a number. Now I'll leave my rest of the code as is, and let's try to execute this code. So we see an exception here, and it says illegal assignment from string to integer. And the reason is on our line number 1, we have a string, but we are trying to store this string value to a integer data type. So that's not allowed. However, if I change my hello world to maybe like 123 and I execute this program, this will execute because now we are storing a number in our integer data type, and the same we see in the output as well. Apart from string and integer, Apex supports a number of data types, and these are boolean, string, integer, long, decimal, double, date, time, date time, blob, and ID. So these are the primitive data types that are available in Apex language. The boolean can store a boolean value like true or false or maybe null. So in programming terms, null means nothing. So when you assign a null value to a variable, that means that variable doesn't store any value. It's completely null and it doesn't occupy any memory space. The string can store the string data types. We have already seen the example of it. We have already seen the example of integer data type as well, which can store a number. Long can also store a number. The difference between integer and long is the number of digits they can store. The integer is a 32-bit data type, so that means it can store a value from negative 2 billion to the positive 2 billion, where long is a 64-bit data type. So this means it can store a value larger than what an integer can store. The difference between a 32-bit and a 64-bit data type is the amount of memory they are going to occupy in your heap. So if you use long variable, then it means it's going to take more memory space. Now, similar to integer or long, we have decimal and double, which allow us to store the numbers with decimals. So you can have some decimal digits as well. The double is a 64-bit data type, which not only occupies more memory space, but it can also store larger values than decimal. We also have date, which can store a date, the time, which can store a time, and there's another one called date time, which can store a date along with the time. We also have blob, which can store the object type of data. So let's say if you want to store an image, then you can store that in the blob data type. If you want to store a file, then you can store that in blob. So blob can store all type of binary data. Now there is a special data type in Apex which is called ID, and this ID can store a Salesforce record ID or object ID or any kind of metadata ID. And this ID can be of 15 digit or 18 digit, where 15 digit is a case sensitive ID and 18 digit is a non-case sensitive ID. So let's go back to our developer console and let's try to see an example of each data type. So here I have declared all type of variables. The first one is a string variable, and let me use that variable here. The second one is a boolean variable which is holding a value true. The third one is an integer variable which is holding a number. The fourth one is a long variable and this number is 7 billion, and you need to make sure that you add L after the number if you want to use the long data type, else Apex will confuse like whether it is an integer or is it a long. Then we have used a decimal with a dot. We have also used a double to calculate the light speed. Then we have a date, and the value assignment is not similar to what we have seen before. Here we are using a method called new instance to generate a date. So we'll learn about these classes and methods in our coming videos, but this is how you declare a date variable and assign a value to it. Then similar to date, we also have a time data type to store the current time, then a date time data type. Now let's execute this code. Let's see our debug logs. So we see our string output, we see our boolean output, we also see our integer, long, decimal, and the double output. We also see a date, a time, and a date time. So in the date time field, we also see the time along with the date. Now let me go back to my code, and here let me try to remove few of the assignments. So I'm going to just simply declare my variables and I'll remove these assignments. And now let's execute our code again. Go to the debug logs. All we see in our output is null because we haven't assigned any value to our variables. And when you don't assign a value to a variable, by default it's null because it's not occupying any memory space. So keep in mind when you don't assign a value to a variable, it's gonna be null. And make sure you write these programs along with me to build your confidence in writing a program. All of these data types that we have seen so far, they are called primitive data types. There are other types of data types as well, and we are going to learn about those in our coming videos.